If you have an unquenchable thirst to crush your bucket list, relentlessly pursue your dreams, and live life on your own terms, then turn up the volume and tune in. You're now listening to Zeph and Moses Blacksburg on the Year of Purpose podcast.
This episode of the Year of Purpose is brought to you by our brand new book, Life Rescripted. Find your purpose and design your dream life before the curtains close. If you want to be the first in line to receive a free digital copy from me, all you have to do is head on over to www.liferescriptedbook.com to find out more. Hello everyone. This is Zeph and Blacksburg with the Year of Purpose podcast, and today I'm joined by Erik Hemingway. And Erik has a family of 8, and they wanted to try something radically different while homeschooling their children. So they sold their home, 99% of all of their possessions, and set out on a 3.5-year adventure, traveling, sailing, and living abroad. After 17,000 miles, 25 countries, and 1 baby later, they run the Family Travel Podcast and even worked on a book. Erik, how's it going today?
It's going great. How are you doing?
Doing pretty well myself, and this is such a cool story. I mean, I do some traveling, but I have not traveled that much yet, and I definitely aspire to do something like this.
Well, perfect. Well, that's that's kind of why we started the podcast. We just want to encourage people that if we can do it, anybody can do it. So that's the message we try to get out there.
Yeah, and that's really been the same thing for me, both in, I left my full-time job to start a business, and now I have a lot more freedom to travel as well. So I think I've been to somewhere around 25 or so states in the last 12 months. So I've been a lot of traveling domestically, but I think next year is going to have to be international.
Good for you. All right. That's awesome.
So where does this all start? Like, how do you just pick up and decide, all right, like we're just going to get rid of everything that we have and this is what we're going to do?
Well, it didn't start, with that goal in mind. I mean, obviously we had, our oldest at the time when we left on the sailing adventure she was 13. But we had traveled with the kids as they were growing up. And Rachel and I, my wife, we've always been passionate about travel. We traveled before we got married, in high school even, internationally a little bit. And then after we were married, we made a couple short trips abroad. And travel was just always a part of our life that we were just fascinated with. And once you get bit by the travel bug, that's definitely hard to shake. So a lot, and I guess we were going along through life. We had been married for 15 years or so at the time. And I stumbled across this book. I was working at a very stressful job in construction, a construction project manager. And so I was working long hours, trying to see the kids at night. And we were involved with our church. We were, the kids were playing sports. It was just felt like everything was just always just a whirlpool of activities, just one thing to the next. And I stumbled across this book in 2000. It was called 1 Year Off, written by David Cohen. And he had taken his family. They had sold their possessions, and they had taken just a 1-year trip around the world, tickets through Delta or United or whatever. They all offer it. But and that was just a huge, light bulb moment for me. When I read that book, I just thought, this is incredible. We had kind of just not really thought of, you kind of limit yourself to, well, maybe next year we can go here for a week or here for 2 weeks or whatever. That's really the extent of your international traveling, or travel at all, because you're trying to fit it into the rest of your life. But when I saw this example of somebody who had actually put their life on pause and, carved out this year to take this adventure, I thought that is exactly what we need to do. So that's how the idea started. And, mixed in there was a lot of road trips with our kids as they were growing up and down the coast of California, and road trip to South Dakota where my brother lives. And so we, our kids were pretty familiar with travel.
And so it's funny how when someone sets the bar higher and it was something that you didn't know was possible, how all of a sudden it becomes possible for you. Because I was kind of in the same boat with traveling, was I didn't think I could take a month off from my business and actually come back and have any money left, let alone, a couple of years and with a whole family to support.
Right. Exactly.
it's such a funny thing when someone really shows you what is possible, how that just kind of clicks into place and you start to do it too. So I have to ask, when you were starting, well, so you went sailing at one point in time and you bought a boat. Did you have any prior knowledge as to what it would be like to be abroad with a family? Did you do any research to figure out, how to sail, how to fix things in the boat when it breaks? Like, how did you prepare to take a whole family and to be able to support them throughout this whole trip?
Well, what we did, what led up to this whole thing was, so we were on the treadmill, and then the book came. So we made a lot of mental shifts at that point. That was maybe 2000, 2001. I actually started my own business. I quit the job that I was at in order to kind of streamline our finances and try to strategize on how we're going to, build up to this trip. We didn't know what the trip was even going to look like at that point. And so fast forward to 2007. I had an offer to take a job in Costa Rica with a friend that I knew in Arizona. And so we bit the bullet. We decided maybe this is our way to travel. So we picked up our family. We moved to Costa Rica. We ended up down there for a year and a half. And as the real estate market was kind of collapsing in the U.S. at that point, it wasn't far behind that it was started to slow down a lot in Costa Rica as well. So when that happened, we were like, we were very fortunate to have sold a couple commercial buildings in Arizona right before the downturn. So we had some savings, and we thought, well, there's really no point in going back to the United States. Things had slowed down in Costa Rica. It was like, well, there's no point in going back to the U.S. right now because there's nothing going on for me, a contractor. And so let's dust off this sailboat idea. We had talked about it years before, and we thought maybe this is what we should do. So that all came together very quickly. We knew we were leaving Costa Rica. The sailboat idea came up. We found a boat in Greece. We had done a little bit of sailing, lake sailing on a small sailboat in Costa Rica, but nothing, never sail on an ocean. No idea what we were in for as far as maintenance or anything like that. So I flew to Greece, looked at this boat, basically just to see if we would fit. And we had it professionally surveyed, where they kind of do an appraisal and look for any problems. And that was kind of a must-have for us, especially being so green. And everything came back clear. So it's like, well, I guess we're out of excuses. Let's just do it.
That's very cool. And so when you were making up your mind to do this, did you ever have any hesitations of, we've got family, friends, people that are all going to be, in the U.S. Obviously, we'll meet a lot of people along the way, but were you ever concerned with, we might not see these people for a long time? And how did you keep up communication?
We did have that concern, and that is probably, I'd say, in my wife and I's opinion is probably the same, that is probably the number one drawback to nomadic travel, or, a life of travel where you're just perpetually on the road, is you do have long periods of time where you don't see family and friends. And that was, of course, there's Skype. It's not quite the same as being in person, but it's also the flip side is that you are, and it was always easier for people to come visit us than for us to pack 8 people on an airplane and, $10,000 in plane tickets. So my parents came and visited us while we were in Turkey, and also in Israel after our baby was born. And we had some good friends that visited us in Israel, two different groups of friends. So we did have visitors and stuff, and that was great. But some extended family, sister-in-law and brothers and stuff, it's just not possible for them to come visit. So there was probably a 3-year period where we didn't see, our immediate family. So that's definitely one of the challenges of traveling.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's got to be tough, but at the same time, it probably makes for a much nicer reunion, when you guys do come back and you get to throw a big party and see everybody again.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We did miss a couple weddings and a niece and nephew being born and stuff, but it was difficult. But you're right. We had some great connections once we came back.
Yeah, and so on top of that, not that it's a huge challenge, but because you chose to homeschool your kids, now you've become what? The algebra teacher, the biology teacher, the English teacher, all in one?
Yeah, basically. I mean, that's pretty much how homeschool works. You do have to wear a lot of hats. And through our podcast, we've talked to a lot of families that are traveling in all kinds of different ways, and a trend seems to be emerging from long-term travelers, and it's called unschooling, or some people call it road schooling, and it's where a lot of focus, you don't place a lot of focus on necessarily book work or busy work or academics necessarily, as far as we've got to get through this biology book or we've got to get through this history book, because you're living in such fascinating places and you're seeing so much culture and different countries and history, and so many facets of your life are submersive education, that you just kind of focus on what is right in front of you. It's really a learn in the now, if that makes sense. And so our homeschooling kind of drifted towards that as we traveled. We took a lot of books with us, but to be honest, we didn't open the books a lot of times, because we're either in a place like Rome or Athens where you want to see the sights, or we were on passage on a sailboat, which is not a fun place to be doing school. And so there wasn't, to be honest, we didn't hit the books really hard for those few years. The flip side being, when we came back to the United States, we wanted to give our kids academic tests to see where they were and kind of assess, see what the damage was that we had maybe caused by not hitting the books so hard. And we were, fascinated and blown away by the fact that they had tested at or above their grade level, their current grade level, not where they left off.
Wow.
So they had been learning the whole time, just a totally different style of learning. And, everybody learns differently, but the travel lifestyle really lends itself to some submersive, fascinating education opportunities.
Oh, I'm sure. And it's funny to hear you say that, only because I've always been someone who, sitting in high school and in college, I was the guy who was saying, when am I ever going to use this again? And actually, just the other day, I was sitting with my mom for lunch, and she couldn't calculate the tip, and she was like, what's, whatever. She gave me a math problem, and I was like, see, Mom, that's the first time I've had to do math since college. It's been 5 years, and I haven't needed it until now. That $100,000 tuition paid off.
Well, that brings up a great point. A lot of times in our school system, I'm not going to bash on the school system. They do the best they can with the hand they've been dealt, trying to educate a massive population. And unfortunately, a lot of times, all schools are guilty of this, I think, is they teach to a test, because they have to have numbers that, qualify, and percentiles and all this kind of thing. And it's not really, I don't think they're necessarily designed to give kids a lot of life skills. There's no personal management, personal time management classes, budget classes. I mean, I'm really getting fascinated by the personal finance field, the FinCon and the, bigger pockets and, Mr. Money Mustache, those kind of ideas, where that's the kind of stuff we should be teaching the next generation, how to manage their finances. Why can't they build their life to be financially independent by 30 or 35 or 25, whatever. And that's the education we need to give the next generation, not necessarily how to diagram chromosomes or maybe detailed algebraic equations, unless you're going to go into that field. You don't need to learn brain surgery if you're going to be a plumber.
Right. Well, and I think it's safe to say that, we could both agree that education in itself is very important, period. At the end of the day, education is important. Everyone's going to learn differently. Everyone's going to teach their kids differently. I think that we are moving into kind of a newer era of, specialization. I went to school as a film major, and I run a video production company now, but I can't say that reading No Country for Old Men in English class, 7 or 8 years ago was, important to get me to where I am now. No offense to my professor, Judy Good, who's also still a good friend of mine. And I don't know if she's listening to this, because I still love her. But that in itself was not, something where I can look back and say, oh, I became a successful business owner because I learned this one lesson, in this literature class back there.
Right. Yeah, and don't take it that I'm against education. I think there's what I always tell my kids is life is an education, and you're always learning. You're always learning. You don't stop when you get to 12th grade or when you graduate from college. Life is about learning, And I hope that I'm still learning new skills when I'm 50 and 60 and 70. I mean, all that we try to teach our kids is how to learn, because you're not going to teach them everything by the time they're 18 and they leave your house. All we try to do is teach them how to learn, because they're going to come up with a new interest when they're 25 or 30. And they know, okay, here's how you tackle it. You get some books from the library. Well, of course, now you look up online, you watch a video, you do this, you do that, and all of a sudden, or you take a specialized course, like you're talking about, things are getting very specialized, and you never give up that passion of learning. And that goes for all aspects of your life, even personalities. You have people in your life that you want to that you're learning from. You learn what you want to be like, and of course, there's people that grate you the wrong way that you learn that you don't want to be like. You don't want to be that kind of a boss or that kind of an employee or whatever. And so that's what we try to instill with our kids. And that's global. That's everywhere. That's whether you're in France or you're in, Wilmington, North Carolina, where we are. It just goes with you every day, every minute.
Yeah, and I think having that sort of life smarts or street smarts is crucial, at least just in this day and age with how things are right now. I'd be curious to hear from you. What would you say are maybe the top 2 or 3 things that you learned, whether it was about yourself or just through that whole adventure? And then maybe what are some of the things that you think your kids really took away from that?
I would say for me personally, it would be patience, because we were all in a lot of uncomfortable situations, new surroundings, and it just took a lot of patience for us to learn to work together. Being with a family, with 5, 6 kids in 350 square feet, will try your patience, and so you just had to learn how to give a lot of grace to each other, a lot of benefit of the doubt. And so we really learned how to work together as a team. But it took a lot of fights and apologies, and there's no room to go pout or throw a tantrum on a boat. It's you have to deal with attitudes right then, and then you move past it. And I think we all learned that. I think for our kids, it was just a fantastic foundation to build them a huge amount of confidence in who they are and what they can accomplish. When we were sailing across the Atlantic, that's a big undertaking, and we talked a lot about it as a family. Like, can we really do this? And is this something that we're comfortable with? Safety, we got a lot of safety equipment that we didn't normally have on the boat for that crossing, and so it was a big deal, And my son and my daughter and I, the 3 of us, were the ones that actually did the sailing. My wife had the baby, so she was taken off of the night watches and all that kind of thing. But you're awake, somebody has to be awake watching for other boats 24/7. And the Atlantic crossing is an 18-day passage. So you don't see land for, almost 3 weeks. And so my kids, they were 16 and 15 at the time. I'm sorry, 17 and 16. And they actually sailed us across the Atlantic. We took turns sleeping. And so you just walk tall when you get to the other side of that kind of accomplishment. And, as a 16-year-old that sailed your family across the ocean, that's a huge confidence builder. There's not much you can't accomplish after that.
Yeah, I guess so. So 18 days, where does that leave from, and where does that get you to?
So a lot of people crossing the Atlantic will sail through Gibraltar, the Straits of Gibraltar. They'll sail down to the Canary Islands, and then which are owned by Spain. It's a Spanish chain of islands. And then there's a lot of boats that will leave from the Canary Islands heading south, and then west as they get a little further south. And what we did is we sailed through Gibraltar. We actually went to Morocco for a time, and then went to the Canary Islands. Then we ended up going kind of off the sailing path down to West Africa. We sailed to Senegal and the Gambia. We sailed up the Gambia River about 100 miles, and the water turns to fresh water. We saw crocodiles and hippos and tons of wildlife, monkeys, and it was just, ridiculous cool. And then we sailed out of the Gambia out to Cape Verde Islands, which is also an African country, a small, maybe 7 or 8 islands out 500 miles off the coast. So we sailed there, and then we laid up there for 2 or 3 weeks, and then we left for the crossing from Cape Verde, West Africa, made landfall in Dominica in the Caribbean, which is just down past Martinique and Antigua.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It's crazy to hear that that only takes 18 days. I had someone that I interviewed way back when we first got our show started, Sonya Balmsteen. She was is still working on it, but she was planning for 3 years to ocean row a boat from Japan to San Francisco.
Oh my
And when I
gosh.
asked her how long that took or was supposed to take, she said somewhere around about 130, 140 days, something like that.
Oh
So to hear
my
18
gosh.
days, I was actually a little surprised when you said that. I was like, man, that's pretty darn quick.
Well, yeah, it's still quite a while. And when you're laying on the, laying in the cockpit, and you see these little dots of airplanes, and they're crossing the same ocean in about 8 or 9 hours. It's kind of discouraging. But what'd you say, 120 days?
I think it was high. I think it was closer to like 140, 150, something
140.
like
Oh
that.
my gosh, that is incredible.
Now, given that's all human powered, having to row a
Yes,
boat through some serious weather,
right.
what was that like for you guys? Did you ever hit any major storms or anything that could have been, I don't know, life threatening or at least concerning?
Well, there's definitely weather patterns that we studied about, and we didn't know when we first started. But you talk to other boaters, other cruisers are a fantastic resource of knowledge, and these people have sailed around the world, and we're just very welcoming and very open with their advice and stuff. So there's actually patterns. Late November is when the season, quote unquote, starts to cross the Atlantic, and that's when the trade winds start and kind of get into a rhythm. And so you're not going to have hurricane. Typically you're not going to have hurricanes at that time. There's a hurricane season and then there's a trade wind season. So we left the beginning of January, January 4th, 2012, and by then the trade winds were pretty much established. We did have a couple days of light wind, and then there was some, 3 or 4 days where the winds picked up, 40, 45 knots, and then the seas, of course, get rolly after that, 15, 20-foot roller waves. And so that was uncomfortable for a few days. But most overall, it was just kind of find a happy place, hold on, get comfortable, and ride it out.
Very cool. So, what happens when you get back from this? I'm sure some of the people are thinking right now, and my question is always, the same thing I was concerned about when I left for a month was that, I'm leaving my business, I'm leaving everything behind here. What am I going to do for money when I get back, and how am I going to get back into that routine of life and being able to afford all the things that I'll be doing next? And so how do you start over fresh when you get back home?
That's a good question. When we left, we were so committed to this adventure. We weren't really concerned. I was willing to spend all of our savings on this adventure because I knew it was going to be impacting for our family and our kids. And of course, nothing is as bad as you fear. We had sold everything already. We did keep one business in Arizona, which we still have, but we sold our cars, house, everything. So we kind of, in the back of our minds, knew when we came back, we were going to be starting over. So we chose North Carolina, Wilmington, to start over in, and we basically sailed up the Cape Fear River and just lived on our boat for a couple months until we could find a house, and then, still had some savings left, even though we were willing to spend it all. We didn't spend it all, and so we had enough money to start over. I got back into construction and just basically moved into a house with 2 air mattresses, and it's incredible how fast you can accumulate. When you get back into the U.S., we just hit Craigslist and started getting beds and furniture, and actually a few people heard about our story and they were like, "Well, we were going to sell all this stuff, but man, you guys are starting out here. You can just take it all." So we got a bunch of free stuff, and it's been a great transition getting back into, quote unquote normal life. But once, like I mentioned, once it's in your system, it's hard to ever, stay put. So, we're already strategizing our next adventure, or whatever that might be. Our oldest 2 kids are married now. One's 21 and one's 20. And so we have 4 at home, and our little guy that was born in Israel just turned 5. So he has really no memories of that boat adventure, even though he sailed across the ocean. He doesn't remember it.
He can look at the
And
pictures.
that's right. We show him the pictures, and he's like, "Wow, that was cool." So we're itching to get him out, and of course our other girls that are at home, and we're just having a great time right now, thinking about brainstorming about what's next and what kind of adventure we want to have.
And I'm sure the other girls were much younger at the time, so the experience would probably be totally different if you were to do something again.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they remember the boat. We have an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old, and of course they remember it, but they remember little aspects of it. They weren't old enough to help with the sailing or navigating or anything like that. So, money exchange, all that's going to be new to them on this next trip. And we're probably not going to do a sailing boat again, but we've got a few ideas in mind that we're going to anxious to try out, take some backpacks and head to Southeast Asia and see what happens.
That's been one of the big things on my list. So Thailand is up next for me, and I've been researching for a while because there was this cool like Southeast Asia airline pass that for a certain very small fee would give you unlimited flights for I think a whole month, and basically you could travel all over Southeast Asia. And so I'm sure there's plenty of options out there. It'll probably come around again, but I've looked into that because I think my next big thing is probably Southeast Asia for about a month or two to see what that's like. And
Awesome.
It's a pretty cool place. And I think one thing to mention is you probably spend a lot less money when you are on the boat. And I'm sure traveling, especially in a place like Southeast Asia, everything is so cheap there. What might be a $3 or $4 coffee here at Starbucks might only be 30 or 40 cents over in Asia. So
Right.
I'm sure the money also is very different when you live that type of a lifestyle.
It is, yeah, that's something a lot of people ask us, and we covered on our podcast about, how do you finance a dream like this? And people usually compare a travel lifestyle because we are in exotic places, and Europe is one of the most expensive places in the world, obviously. But when we were living on our boat, you have no hotel. We ate out very little, so we're cooking on the boat, especially with a big family. It's hard to eat out for anything more than, basic pizza or whatever. So our family was living on about $1,300 to $1,400 a month for the 8 of us, because there's so many other expenses that you have in a, no utilities, no insurance, auto insurance, gas for your car, and all of the things that come up in day-to-day life, clubs that you're in or sports for the kids. And there's just so many little things that eat away at your finances, that are out of the picture when you're traveling. And so everybody, all of our guests can attest to the fact that everybody's blown away by how little you can spend. Of course, you can, it's the same thing. You can have caviar and champagne, but you can live very inexpensively, and that's the fantastic thing about nomadic travel.
Yeah, and I think that it's got to be freeing to get rid of all that stuff. I mean, I hate seeing the bills coming in every month of car insurance and business insurance, and I've got rent for my office, I've got rent for my house, and there's so many bills that come in, and I can't imagine what it would be like to, for a couple of years at a time not be walking down the street to get the mail out of the mailbox and not having to either.
Right. It's fantastic. I can attest to that, we just live so simply, and we, take out cash. We took out cash out of ATMs wherever we were, and that way it's already in the currency that you're at.
Right.
And then, you just check online with your bank statements and make sure everything's okay. You check in a couple times a month. It's not a daily or even, every other day budgeting, checking, paying bills, all that kind of stuff. And of course, things have gotten so much more streamlined with online bill pay and all that. It's easier than ever. But it is very freeing to get rid of all of that. I guess it's like subliminal baggage that you're always thinking about, I know I've got this bill coming up, and I know I've got this check coming in, and it's just life, and it's just a great opportunity to put that on pause and really focus on the now. And it's super rewarding.
So having been on this great adventure and, looking forward to the next one, what's your advice for anyone, whether it's a family or even an individual like myself? I just turned 26. I've got no kids, no well, I have family, but no, relationships or anyone.
Not that you're responsible for.
Right. So basically nothing that is tying me down right now. So whether it's someone like me or someone who might have, 5 or 6 kids, what advice do you have for them just when it comes to living life on your own terms and really taking the leap to take advantage of all it has to offer?
Well, there are a couple different things. Great question. And it's something I really, have been trying to solve is this issue of fear and how do you, because that's what it all comes down to. You're not really afraid of running out of money. You're afraid of starving because you have no money. Every fear can come back to, and of course your mind makes these huge what if problems that realistically will never materialize. And we don't push that travel is for everyone. But we try to encourage people that if travel is your thing, and it even lifestyle, whatever lifestyle you want, you just need to make steps to make it happen. You need to try to tackle the fears head on. What we did was we actually wrote out on a piece of paper our fears, our biggest fears with the whole situation. We asked our kids, and my wife and I would sit down and write out all these things. And then you can actually, when you see the fears, you can address them, you can plan for them the best you can, and then it's done. You don't have to fret about it. You don't have to let them spiral out of control at 2 a.m. or at whatever while you're laying in bed. And once you put them on paper, I think that helps us a lot. So that's one piece of advice. And if travel is your thing, then I would just encourage you, don't make it a someday or a gee, it would be nice, like you're going to buy a jacuzzi or something. You have to make it a goal. And that is a huge shift when we could do to we will do this. And that was finally what pushed us over the edge. We picked a date on the calendar. We started selling stuff, and you'll be surprised how the momentum will pick up behind you. And you are just encouraged by the fact that things are in motion. You actually put things in motion. And when you start decluttering your house and selling your house, or your lease is up and you're starting to make plans like, hey, when my lease is up, I'm not signing another one. So 2 months out, I'm getting rid of this and that and cleaning out this, and it will happen. The pieces will fall into place.
Yeah, and I've been in a very similar scenario of, I wanted to write a book and I put a date on the calendar. And so for everyone listening right now, we're recording this at the end of August of 2015. As of today, I am 18,000 words into this book.
All right.
I'm about a third of the way through, and my goal was to publish this and have it out selling and ready by January 1st of 2016. So it's one of those things where as soon as you set that date on the calendar, things really start to move. And I think that for so long I was making that mistake of, I want to write a book eventually, and someday I'll do that. And when you stop doing that and you start setting the real goal of how you're going to do it, it just kind of happens, and the world kind of conspires to help you out.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, and that's what, so many of our guests, I ask them the same thing. And it's surprising to hear, I hear that so many times, like, yeah, the universe was just, everything was just falling into place. And of course there's setbacks and detours or whatever, but you're not changing direction. You're still on the path to your goal. And could it be something as simple as just putting a date on a calendar? It sounds ridiculous, because we do it all the time, but it actually works. And so it's really, maybe it's a subconscious thing. When you make that date, then your mind just plans on how to make it happen by that date.
Right. I hate to sound cliche, the movie The Secret, where there was this guy and he's just like, yeah, I was dreaming about all these checks showing up at my mailbox, and one day I woke up and walked outside and there were all these checks in my mailbox. And it's not like that, but I think that there is some sort of a mindset shift that happens when you do set this goal and it becomes a reality. And I know for the book writing stuff, one of the things that a coach I hired told me to do was get your book cover made now. Don't wait until the book is written to get it. And the second I saw that cover, it just solidified everything for me, and the whole book made sense, and it just started to click, and I've been writing every day towards it. So it's very interesting how it all plays out.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. Good for you.
Yeah, man. So I'd
Yeah,
love to share with everybody your podcast where people can learn more about your journey and hear
great.
about other families that are doing this too. So what's
Great.
the best way for people to keep track?
Let me just add one more thing to that last thing. Another huge shift for us, and I just thought of it, is when we realized that we were going to have major regrets if we did not do this adventure. We thought about it. We thought, are we out of our minds to take this much money and live this way and take our kids out of their surroundings and all that? And then we thought, are we going to regret when we're 60 years old? And we've been like, we should have really done that. I thought, both of us agreed, yeah, we would have major regrets. That was the shift for us. It was like, okay, then that's it. We have to do it. So for us, we interview families that are traveling all different ways, sailboats, RVs. We have a lot of RV families. We have a family that's rode bikes from Alaska to the bottom of Argentina, 3 years, 17,000 miles as well by bike. And the name of our podcast is called Family Adventure Podcast. And our website is www.familyadventurepodcast.com. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, any Android, whatever. Just search it up, Family Adventure Podcast. And yeah, we'd love to hear from people and how we can help you achieve your dreams.
Awesome. Well, Erik, it's been great meeting you, and tell Rachel that I admire the adventure that you guys went on, and, good luck for this new one that you guys are researching and figuring out. And when you decide on what it is, I'd love to hear how that's going to play out.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks, Evan, so much for having me on your show, and best of luck to you.
All right. Talk to you soon. This episode of The Year of Purpose is brought to you by our brand new book, Life Rescripted. Find your purpose and design your dream life before the curtains close. If you want to be the first in line to receive a free digital copy from me, all you have to do is head on over to www.liferescriptedbook.com to find out more. I've discovered what I think is the world's most effective process to design your path in life. It'd be a shame if I didn't share it. In Life Rescripted, you will discover the #1 strategy for determining your life purpose and how you can start a new path today. The 5X life hack rule for accomplishing your dreams and designing your life on your own terms 5 times faster. The ultimate solution for fear and how you can leverage it right now to make this year your best year yet, and so much more. Reserve your spot in line to get a free copy at www.liferescriptedbook.com, and I will see you in the next episode.